Okay. So again, yesterday we continued our discussion with the statement of the problem. I discussed with you that the statement of the problem always starts with the general objective of your study, and then it is followed by the different questions or sub questions or subtopic that you need to answer through your investigation. And then after that, we also have the assumptions, but assumptions are just belief of the researchers, but it does not need to be proven. Dili na siya kailangan i-test kung tama ba. Ang ginatest nato kay ang atoang hypothesis. And yesterday, I mentioned also that sa hypothesis, most of the time, ang ginagamit natin is ang null hypothesis. Okay? Null hypothesis ang ginagamit. It should be presented in the negative form. We will be denying the existence of any difference or relationship between our variables. Okay? So, hangtod dinha sa hypothesis, ang part 1 that you need to submit this coming Friday. Ang part 2 will be next week. So the part 2 starts with the significance of the study. Again, in the significance of the study, you will first identify the people or the group of people that will directly benefit from your study, especially the findings of your study. So after identifying them, you have to explain also what benefit are they going to get from your study. Okay, and then after that, we have the theoretical framework. It is very important for you to research the different theories, principles, or concepts, may it be scientific or sa psychology na side or sa education na side, as long as these theories will become anchor sa inyuhang study. Dinha mag-revolve ang inyuhang study. Okay? Dinha siya ma-anchor. So, ang kailangan lang ninyo dinha, ang name sa theory, the name of the author of the theory, and the part of the theory that is related to your study at hand. Okay, so this morning, we will continue with the conceptual framework and also the, what's the last one? Scope and delimitation. But I told you that after the scope and the delimitation, we still have another section, and that's the review of related literature and studies. Pero let's have it kind of separate na discussion. Kasi kailangan po na to ma-establish ang inyuhang RRL. Though again, it is still included sa introduction na section. So let's continue with the conceptual framework. If wala na mo'y pangutana about the other parts of the introduction, let's have the conceptual framework. So sa conceptual framework, this one illustrates what you expect to find through your research. Actually, sa conceptual framework, this is where we identify the variables in the study, and then we will define their relationship. Mag-map out tayo how they are related to each other. So most of the time, this is how the conceptual frame looks like. Pero kung simple research lang na siya, most of the time, it will just include independent variables and dependent variables. So, ang independent variable, please do not forget that this can be also called predictor, stimulus, antecedent, or manipulated na treatment. So, this is the variable that is being manipulated by the researcher, or this is the variable that can be changed. So, kung you are conducting an experiment, whatever is the variables in the study that you are manipulating, ibutang ninyo na siya dira sa independent variable. So, always na siya class naka-box. Ayan, naka-box na siya. And then please take note that outside you will write the name independent variable, and then inside the box will be the specific independent variable. And then this arrow, ayan, naagin na siya arrow, a simple arrow. This one will define the difference or the relationship of the independent variable and then the dependent variable. Meaning, if you manipulate this, the presumed cause, you will have the presumed effect. So the presumed effect is called dependent variables. Pwede po siya tawagon og outcome variable or the criterion response, consequence, outcome, or effect. So kana sila tanan, kung imuhang i-manipulate ning independent variable, you will really get the dependent variable. So for example, sa study na hypoglycemic activity of, what's the plant again, rambutan. So ang ginamanipulate sa study na is syempre ang rambutan. But during sa ilahang study, aside from rambutan, they also have treatments like positive control and negative control, where these substances are also given to animal, laboratory animals. So they are included sa independent variable nila. Sa independent variable, they listed there, the rambutan, syempre. And then number 2, the positive control. I think they used the glimepiride, if I'm not mistaken. Ang positive control is any drug that has the same mechanism of action with the plant, the same effect also. And then they also have the negative control. So the negative control or the control mismo are those animals na wala lang binigay na treatment, pero nag-check pa rin ng blood glucose level. So ang kanilang dependent variable, which is the outcome variable, is actually the blood glucose level. Kasi kung ihatag ang plant material sa animals, pag i-check na to ang iyahang blood, you will really get the blood glucose level of the animal. So that's the simplest na experimental na study pag-abot sa conceptual framework. Now, how about the descriptive na mga study? Actually, it's the same thing kung unsa ang inyuhang ginastudihan. Makita po ninyo din haon sa ang dependent ug ang independent variable. I'll be giving you examples later. I'll just, wait lang. Ako asang humanon ning diagram na ni. Kasi na ay 3 ka studies na descriptive. So aside from the independent variable and then the dependent variable, as you can see on the screen, we also have the so-called moderating and mediating variable na ana siya ibutang sa tunga. The arrow is pointing to the arrow of connecting the independent and the dependent variable. And then we also have another one here, the confounding variable, which is also called the intervening variables. So isa-isa ho nato sila sa research variable. Ang variable class, these are concept that has an observable value which may influence the condition or status of another concept. So again ha, pag variable, anything that can be measured, anything that can be identified, and we are presuming that these variables has somewhat an effect to another concept or another variable. So again, the most common variables in research are the independent and the dependent. So the independent variable is the presumed cause, or these are variables or concepts that can affect or that can cause changes to another variable. Thus, it is also called predictor variable. Well, the dependent variable again is the expected outcome. That is the variable that is expected to change as you manipulate the independent variable. So it can also be called criterion variable or outcome variable. Now, na-mention ako kagaina, in between, we have the moderating or the mediating variable. Sa tunga na siya, class. Ang moderating or mediating variable can be quantitative or qualitative. So, depende siya as long as it can affect the direction or strength of the relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. So mauna siya nga sa tunga siya ibutang kasi si moderating or mediating variable, pag nasali siya sa inyuhang thesis, malahi class ang relationship sa IV ug sa DV. So for example, if you look at the screen, you have here availability of reference manuals. That's the independent variable. And then you are looking kung naay availability sa reference manual, tan-awon nato karon kung for example ginastudihan ni sa researcher, no, tan-awon kung pila ka buok ang gina-reject. Wait lang kay Lobat. Now, that's the simplest thing, the IV and the DV. Pero however, in their study, they have found out na naadi ay moderating variable. Sa tunga, they have placed their interest and inclination. So even if class na ay mga available na reference materials, the number of rejects may change because of the interest and inclination of the readers. So pwede manggod nga available ni siya pero dili di ay ganahan ang mga readers, so they might reject the manual. So actually si interest and inclination wala gyud siya appeal sa gusto nimo studihan. Kaya lang mo nagibutang sila sa tunga kay it can affect though the relationship between the IV and the DV. Other examples of mediating or moderating variables. So if you can look at the screen, you have here, sa study, ang gusto gyud mabalaan kay ang hours sa pag-study sa student and tan-awon siya kung naa ba siya effect dito sa exam score. So dependent variable ni. Kani independent kasi i-check man nimo kung mag-change ang iyahang hours of study. Example, isa ka oras lang siya mag-study, ang uban duha ka oras, and then i-check kung naa ba to'y effect sa exam score. Ang isa ka oras ba mag-study, mas baba ba ang iyahang score kaysa sa duha ka oras. So that's what the researcher wants to identify or investigate in the study. However, during the study, na siya'y nakita nga moderating variable, and that is the IQ of the student. So kahit na isang oras lang siya mag-study, kung mataas naman ang kanyang IQ, it can affect the outcome. It can affect the exam score. So I hope na sabtan ninyo ang purpose or ang meaning anang moderating or mediating variable. Okay? So another example, you have there the stress. So ang gusto i-investigate sa researcher ani is ang stress ba, ang levels sa stress naa ba siya effect dito sa pagkaroon sa person ug depression. Okay? So gusto niya mabalaan kung taas ang stress, mag-lead ba siya sa depression, or kung baba ang stress, walay depression nga mahitabo. Pero nakita pud niya sa iyang study that that's not always the case. Even though taas ang stress, na ay moderating variable that may affect the outcome, and that is the social support. So karon ang iyang conceptual framework na bag-o, gusto niya tanawon ang level sa stress, and then ang sa tunga i-check po niya ang social support. So kung naaba na ang kaning social support naabay effect dito sa outcome, which is kanang magkaroon og depression ang patient. Okay? So lastly, we have here teaching method. So daghan man tag teaching method na ginagamit no, natay lecture, naay mga board work, daghan kayog mga teaching method. Na ay mga laboratory experiments, tapos tan-awon ang effect ato sa academic performance sa estudyante. Pero na-find out pod sa study na dili lang siya diretso nga pag example mag-lecture, magsigig lecture ang student, diretso tumutaas ang academic performance sa estudyante. Kasi na moderating variable that might affect the academic performance, and that is the background of the student or the children. So to summarize again, when you say moderating variable, these are variables, either qualitative or quantitative, that can affect the direction or strength of the relation or relationship between our IV and DV. Okay? That's moderating variable. Pero let's have an exercise. DV lang ni siya. We will just identify the dependent variable. I want to see if you can still identify the independent and dependent variable in the given problem. sa screen. So you may answer sa chat or pwede po mo mag-unmute para sa inyong participation. Anyway, since this is recorded, your answers are also being recorded even if sa chat ninyo siya i-send. So sige, number 1, we have the problem number 1. Dr. Smith examines daily exposure to a sun lamp. So, gitanaw niya, duha ka variables. 1 hour of exposure and then ang isa kay walay exposure. So,